Hi, boys and girls. This is lesson 2-3, solving multi-step equations. We've skipped ahead a couple of sections because you obviously already know how to solve one-step equations and most two-step equations. This section actually does cover two-step equations, but I thought it would be a good starting place. We're on page 85 in your workbook, and here we have our first example. Use properties of equality to solve each equation. You're pretty well tired of properties about now, I'm sure. Check your solutions. What they want you to do is to solve this equation for A. All right? Get my handy dandy pen going. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, in order to solve for A, we first have to get the variable term alone, okay? Well, that means we need to get rid of the minus 6 because it's on the same side of the equal sign with the variable term. Well, to get rid of a minus 6, we have to add 6. And in order to keep the equation balanced, we have to add 6 to both sides, which means now all we have over here is 2a. You could see a minus 6 and a plus 6 wipe each other out, and we have 4 plus 6 is 10. Then the last step is to divide both sides by 2 in order to get the a by itself. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay. Now, here's the check that, and I get it because I never check my work either, so I totally understand. But here's the check. They're telling you that if you take the answer you got, 5, and plug it back into the original equation in place of the variable, if you get a true statement, then you know you solved the problem correctly. All right, well, they put the 5 in for the A. They did 2 times 5 is 10. 10 minus 6 is 4, which is a true statement, which means that 5 was the correct answer. All right, so for B, this is a different format. N plus 1 is being held hostage by this negative 2 in the denominator. So whenever we see a problem that looks like this one, our first step is going to be a little different. Our first step is going to be to multiply both sides by negative 2. If we multiply both sides by negative 2, what happens is we get rid of this heinous looking fraction over here, and the n plus 1 is finally free from it. And 15 times negative 2 is negative 30. Then our final step would be to subtract 1 from both sides, and we would get n equals negative 31. So for filling in the blank over here, they want to show that you're multiplying both sides by negative 2. And then they want you to show that you're getting n plus 1 equals negative 30. And then they want you to subtract 1 from both sides. And you get n equals negative 31. Right. Next, this is just a regular two-step equation. We have 3m plus 4 equals negative 11. We want to isolate the variable term, so our first step is to subtract 4 from both sides. We want to get rid of the number that's on the same side of the equal sign with the variable term. That gives me 3m equals negative 15. Then when I divide both sides by 3, I get m equals negative 5. And then here we have another weirdie. We have 8 equals x minus 5 being held hostage in a fraction by a 7. Okay. In order to get rid of this 7, we need to multiply both sides by 7. Multiply both sides by 7. That gives me 56 is equal to, and over here, these 7's cancel out, leaving us with just x minus 5. Then we add 5 to both sides, and we get 61 equals x. Pretty straightforward. Then we have a word problem. The student council raised 2/5 of the money they need to cover the cost of the school dance with a bake sale. They raised an additional $150 selling raffle tickets. If the student council has raised $630, what is the cost of the dance? Write an equation for the problem, then solve the equation. So they want you to complete the table. I prefer to jump right to the equation here. We know that they raised 2/5 of the money they need to cover the school dance with the bake sale, okay? So they raised 2/5 of the money they need. Of is multiplied. Plus $150 selling raffle tickets. And if they have raised a total of $630, how much is the dance? Okay, well, now we just have to solve. But up here, what would you write? Let C equal the cost of the dance. It's very hard for me to write in these small spaces. All right, so the equation is going to be 2/5 C plus 150 is over here equals 630. They couldn't have made that any harder on me. All right, so we have 2/5 C plus 150 equals 630. We want to isolate the variable term, so we need to subtract 150 from both sides. Okay, then we have 2/5 C equals 480. Then we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of 2/5, which is 5/2. These guys will cancel each other out, leaving us with just C, and 5/2 times 480 is 1,200. So the total cost of the dance is $1,200. Okay. All right. A sporting goods store sold 2/3 of its basketballs, but 8 were returned. Now the store has 38 basketballs. How many were there originally? Write an equation for the problem, then solve the equation. Okay, so this one was kind of confusing. If the store originally had, they sold 2/3 of the basketballs they had, what we have to ask ourselves then is, how many basketballs did they still have left? All right, well, if they sold 2/3 of the basketballs, that means they have 1/3 of the basketballs left. Now, what about those 8 that got returned? All right, well, they would have been in the 2/3 that's missing. So those 8 have to be added back into the amount we still have because they got returned. And then if they currently have 38 basketballs, it would be made up of the 1/3 that they still had plus the 8 that got returned. Then we solve this equation. We subtract 8 from both sides. We get 1/3 B equals 30. Then we multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal of 1/3, which is 3. And that tells us that originally the store had 90 basketballs. So the correct answer was C. All right? Solve multi-step equations with letter coefficients. What they've done here is they're saying let A be a constant and solve this for X. And you will see several problems like this, okay? We're solving for X, not A. So our first step would be to get rid of this plus 7 by subtracting 7 from both sides. Now we have some number, we don't know what it is, times X equals -2. Our second step then would be to divide both sides by the number we don't know what it is, A, and we would get that X is -2 over A. Here's another example of a problem like that. 2 minus AX equals -8. Okay. So AX is the variable term we're trying to get alone. So we would subtract 2 from both sides. And that gives us -AX equals -10. Then we divide both sides by -A, that would be our coefficient. And we get that X is equal to, negative over a negative makes a positive, +10 over A. So D is the correct answer. How fun is that? And that brings me to the practice section, all right, which you are not going to do right now. We're going to do these in class, all right? So that is the very first section of our multi-step equations, probably, hopefully, just a refresher for you. And I will see you guys in class.